All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the New Now. We're here with Dr. Brent Davis Campbell from Autodidactic, and we're going to discuss, well, two of Brent's amazing, well, one's a formulation, Pure Potential, and the other one is the single flower essence, Madam Fate, and how they can help you with your practical evolution. Hello, Brent. How's it going?
Good afternoon.
So let's start with Pure Potential. Very interesting for me to hear about, enhancing our connection to source, powerful psychic protection. Who doesn't want more good luck? I'd love to get some ins and outs on that particular combination essence you've created.
Yeah, and each one of these things is a rather complex story, and I'll try and summarize it. But I was present when, in the 1980s, in practice, when energy psychology was born. That is the discipline which allows us to look at a person, assess them if we're trained either as any kind of a integrative healthcare professional, chiropractors, a lot of them, and some psychologists have the training to go in and look at a person and determine where their obstacles are, where their subconscious mind blocks are. And there are a lot of physical techniques. The best known one is tapping, the various tapping techniques, all of those things that came out and went all over the world. They're all wonderful. Some of them work quite well. They're extremely variable. But as a result of that background in the 80s, when I had the revelation in 2000 for the Floralive uncut flower essences, I had that background to help me understand how to characterize new flowers to see if they would work in that model for enhancing our well-being and for removing unconscious blocks. So you can try and meditate, you can do practices that take a great deal of time. And if you're involved in those practices, I always encourage people to continue them. But what's rather interesting is you can add these drops. We use Floralive.com as the site that shows these products. And you can add these drops to water and miraculous things happen. Now, my interviews, which on the New Now with Lorenzo, we're covering that over time. We're explaining how that can happen. And with Campbell, we've done a few of these wonderful interviews. And to try and, the only word that I could come up with was a dispensation. Dispensation comes sort of out of the Catholic religion. That's where people think of it. You go in and you pray or you do some process in the Catholic ritual, and then you get a granting of a divine fulfillment, we hope. But that's kind of how that comes. This is not linked to any religion. It's linked directly to God's source, as the frequencies in light get into the petal of a flower and they transfer code into the flower. And that's what my book talks about, The Floral Hand of God, Secret Healing Codes of Flowers Revealed. There's a website, thefloralhandofgod.com, that has the book on it, and it explains this in detail. But what happens in essence is that divine code flows in light through photons, comes into the surface of a flower. That flower, then I came up with the process of leaving the flower growing, which magnifies its power at least 1,000 times over a normal flower essence, because it is grounded to the earth, which is what is necessary for driving an antenna. This is the technical physics of that, is described by Dr. Tiller, who wrote a chapter in my book. So when you have a flower that's living and you don't cut it and you extract the flower frequencies from it, you get this massive power. So that's a very important background to understand what can happen when the fate matches you. It doesn't produce miracles for everyone, but the percentage of miracles that it produces is very high. After I'd been in practice 20 years, I could already see, like, oh my gosh, this is producing massive changes quickly for an inordinately high number of people. So Pure Potential has a huge number of flowers in it, way more than we normally put into a combination flower essence. And it's just that way because it's supposed to be that way. That's my guidance always comes from above, and I get the guidance of what to do. Then I do it. Then for many years, I take it to a practice, and I've got my patients, and I find it, I prove it. Then I send it out to my core group of advanced care professionals. They look at it. And if it's always a thumbs up, then we go for the product. And this one was a huge one. And so hopefully everybody can read that. I'm free from the influence of negative forces and fields directed at me. So that's a big rabbit hole, depending on where you want to go with the conspiracy theories. But we've got a lot of energy that's being shot at us that's not good. Let's put it that way. Whether it's in microwave or negative astral stuff, or, go as far as you want to go into whatever esoteric direction. We've got a lot of negative forces and fields around us. And I was directed to a very sacred area in Peru where massively powerful flowers have been used by shamans for centuries for just this exact thing, to transform and shield and protect. So if you look at this, when we do energy psychology, we actually test these phrases on the patient or client. And we can find out if they respond or not. For instance, if someone believed and said the phrase, if I feel happy, I must feel guilty. Whoa, that is horribly dysfunctional. Where would that come from? Someplace in the long past, or possibly this lifetime. This is, again, it's a whole variation of what you feel, what your epistemology, what your point of view, how you see the world. I say transgenerational karma or collective unconscious of Carl Jung. It doesn't matter where you look at it, but we've got stuff that's affecting us, these deep core beliefs, and where on earth do they come from? Ultimately, it's not so important to know where they come from, but to make sure they're gone. So what we do is we test this, we administer the substance. 4 weeks later, we test it again, and it's gone. In fact, most of the time, it leaves immediately in office. Now, it leaves because of that immediate response to the drops, but then it normally needs to be repeated. So we give a 1 ounce bottle that lasts 3 or 4 weeks, and that's a massive amount of clearing. But look at these. It is impossible for me to forgive myself for past fails. A person tests true. If I question authority, I will be destroyed. Now, I love that one because everybody was being told, particularly in your part of the world, Campbell, that nobody better question authority. Right. Because, well, what if, some clever person figured out how to use 2 billion watts of power in one of our broadcasting antenna arrays and code in that belief that if you question authority, you will be destroyed. And they put 2 billion watts of power behind that, bounced it off the ionosphere, and sent that around the world at the speed with which that travels. And everybody was exposed 24 hours a day to that belief. If I question authority, I will be destroyed. Well, it probably wouldn't have a good effect on their unconscious mind. So curiously, how did I discover that? Story is too long. But all of these things were discovered on patients. Every one of these came from a patient, more than one patient. I cannot be happy until things change. That's Eckhart Tolle's whole message. You better be happy now, at this moment. Don't wait for happiness until it changes, because you better be happy now. That's that. Every one of these is practically the entire teaching of a huge effort of trying to help people transform. And that's all in these little drops. All right. So I am patient with myself. The person fails it. They're not patient with themselves. You give it to them and they get patience. I cannot release my past completely. So every one of these has 1 or 2 flowers associated with it. So it's quite remarkable.
How many flowers do you have in the pure potential
I
essence?
think pure potential is like 12 or 15 flowers.
So the way that this is working is basically plants have, because of the way they're structured, that they're turning source energy into a certain frequency, and then that frequency is affecting our energy when we take it into our biofield.
It's actually hard to know, and I deal with that in one of the chapters in the Floral Hand of God book. We know that there are demonic forces, pretty clear. There's lots of demonic forces out there screwing around with our earth. Well, we also know that they're very highly illumined beings from whatever planetary realm they may come from. Some people believe they come from certain areas in high levels of space. Whatever the case may be, there are benevolent and beneficent people, beings out there, highly conscious. It looks to me, the messaging was, those beings saw this cycle coming long ago. They knew this well in advance. And they began characterizing the energy that needed to be sent as a countermeasure for that. And so those energies code was sent into certain flowers. It's extraordinary. I mean, how could that be? But it looks like that's what's happened. And then I got tapped on the shoulder and sent around the world to try and find these things. And I happened to have a clinical setting where I could prove it. I could find out if these amazing things actually were real. And that's how it grew over these 20 years. So this is an example of a lake at about 13,000 feet. It's a group of sacred lakes in Peru. And I never mentioned where this is because it always needs to remain anonymous. So I stayed at the side of that lake, and the senior shaman's son, who's here, is 29 years old. He came out as well as a shaman and stayed with me for a few days to show me these things, which was an absolutely great blessing, because I never would have found them. You have to be shown these things by the people that live there. And he's showing me one particular plant they use. I don't use that one, but that was a plant that they use for a type of clearing. But it's the energy of that lake. So right next to his feet was the plant that allows people to receive love. It's called Flor de la Luna. And that was the first flower that his father showed me. Profoundly helpful and necessary. That's impure potential. Just look at that. Go into the energy. I took all of these photos. I've taken thousands and thousands of pictures, but for this process, I was crawling on a mountain side, hillside. You know, I weep when I think about it, because the beauty of this place, there are no words. It's beyond, it's ineffable, as the word goes. You can't explain the gorgeousness. I have to walk or crawl and actually visit each one until one of them volunteers. It says, I'm the one. I'm the one. You extract me. That's the one. Most of the time, it's a perfect blossom. It has perfect geometry. And I get chills. So this is one of the flowers. It's surrounded with water. The code that's in those color and the energy, it is a complex antenna array. So the code that's in there has these unlocking frequencies in it that unlocks our obstacles. So that's pure potential. And then Madam Faith. Madam Faith's cool. I think we'll see that. Yeah, we don't have a good picture, but that's in another, some of these flowers are taken from one and put in another. They occur in more than one place in these complex remedies. So Madam Fate is in a couple of them. Madam Fate is really a cool flower.
Is Madam Fate in pure potential as well, or is that a separate flower for people to pick up?
It's in pure potential. So many things are in pure potential.
With flowers, can you get two different flowers and they both have the same effect?
Very similar. Yeah. A lot of flower, like for example, for forgiveness, we have two flowers that have the test phrase. For example, I cannot forgive the injuries done to me. Okay, that's a test phrase. The person says that phrase, we test them. I cannot forgive. It tests true or not. I mean, okay, they cannot forgive. And you ask them and they'll tell you, yeah, no, I remember it's this person that violated the trust. And they remember they cannot forgive that person. So then there are two remarkable flowers, one of which I think we'll show the picture of, that can help forgiveness. And that's huge. I mean, there are spiritual traditions that teach forgiveness is one of the absolute basics on your path of recovery and evolution. You've got to have forgiveness operational or you can't move ahead. So this one, Madam Fate, there's a whole chapter on Madam Fate in the Floral Hand of God book. It was my most fun chapter to write. Totally true. The remarkable way that I was guided to this flower, which is hard to believe, actually, but it's the whole flower is in there. And by the way, there is, for everybody, I read that chapter in the blog that's out there that's got me reading the book. That links from the floralhandofgod.com and also from our other website. And it's Great Awakening Empowerment Tools. If you just type that into Google, you'll come up with that blog where I'm reading the most interesting chapters. And one of the chapters is called Madam Fate. So that's a fun one to hear, but it is powerful protection, removing the influence of negative or malevolent entities or spirits, and instilling us with confidence. In that chapter, I was led to a woman in Jamaica where this was prepared. And she ended up telling me the history of how that flower was used in Africa, because it came from Africa. And they brought it, apparently, the slave people that were brought to Jamaica brought that with them. And one of the things is in Africa, the flower was rubbed on people. They rubbed it on themselves before they went into battle to assure that they would be victorious. So it has a tremendous power of instilling confidence, as well as protecting us from negative entities. So very, very important flower.
I was thinking too, like that, especially in the last couple of years, we've heard so much talk about shadow work and all this kind of stuff, and you've got to go back and relive all this trauma and blah blah blah, which I don't agree with.
No, you don't.
Because even if you go back and do all this shadow work, the ultimate thing you have to do is change your frequency, right?
Very, very important point. Huge.
Remember, in the end, nobody wins unless everybody wins.